tell you what is going to happen with the market and with Trump after this 90 days tariff pause. But first, you have to understand why Trump really freaked out and he U-turned last week. Well, you need to understand US government bond, right? I know it's not the stock market, but it's the bond market, specifically US government bond. They call it treasuries, right? Now, these US treasuries are crucial because they help government, US government borrows money from the entire world. And because they like to spend, right? So it's backed by the fact that US dollar is the world's reserve currency. So it means that US treasuries or US government bond is naturally what people thought as the safe haven to park their money or for investment, low risk investment. Now, typically during economic uncertainty, which is reflected by a turbulent stock market, investors will flock to government bonds, meaning that they pull out money from the stock market, they put money into bond market. Again, just not any bond market, but specifically government bonds. In this case, I'm talking about US government bond. Again, when that happens, your bond prices goes up, right? But this time, it did not. And this is an anomaly. It's something very abnormal, right? Just like your cancer cells. Instead, at the same time when the market actually go down at the day when it's supposedly Trump's going to impose the start of a tariff, right? US government bond actually fell in prices. And this actually is a signal to say that, hey, Trump, the market was telling you, again, the bond market was telling Trump to say that, wait, I'm losing confidence in you. So therefore, I don't want to put money into US government bond. And this unusual situation actually really worried Trump and his advisors, right? It wasn't about the stock market anymore. It was about the entire financial market reacting to his actions, upending the stability of the entire markets. It's not really what Trump wants to do, because it contradicts with his promise of making America great again. And he do not want his current next 4 years of presidency, people want to remember him for that. So this 90 days tariff pause wasn't due to other countries begging him for negotiation. This is only what he wants the world to know. But the reality is, for us who are financially literate, who are advisors, we know, no, it's not. It's because he was actually alarmed by how the US government bond market was reacting to what he just did, right? But of course, he U-turned that. And he admitted to watching the bond market very closely. And he said, the bond market is very tricky, but now we look at it, it's beautiful. But believe me, I watched most of his The Apprentice reality show, since 20 years ago. And I tell you, in Trump's attention-seeking dictionary, what he said means that I got freaked out. And I'm glad that in the last moment, I made a U-turn and, it didn't deteriorate further. That's what actually he meant, right? So the global stock markets, right, may sway to Trump's mood swings and whims, but the US government bond market show him who the real boss is. Now, in this scenario, right, I will also tell you who's the real loser and the winner are so far. Because when he's going for this tariff and all that, and you know that how they actually calculate the percentage of tariffs imposed on each country, right? The calculation that doesn't make sense. So it's just like child's play. Because Trump's real aim is to manage US government debt, trillions of dollars, and he wants to push for lower interest rates before he can refinance it during his 4 years of presidency. However, with investors pulling out or not really putting more money into flocking into US government bonds, when he say this today is the start of the tariff, the dollar actually weakened in a knee-jerk reaction against euro, Swiss francs, and even versus minor currencies like ringgit. And he found himself in a precarious spot, very similar to UK Prime Minister, you remember, Truss in 2022, who faced backlash when she just announced her tax cutting policies, but then actually say, okay, you are tax cutting that, but where are you going to get this money from, to fund the government coffers, right? And this figure pound sterling and also a UK government bond crisis, making her the shortest serving prime minister in British history. You still remember that? In other words, what happened was actually Donald Trump Liz Truss moment. And when he thought he was an economic bravado, right? But when he meets the bond market, the reality of the bond market, that's where he freaked out. And the difference is that Truss was actually forced out by the UK Parliament. She was forced to step down, but Trump got away with what he did so far. So yeah. And the other thing you might fail to see is that he's actually in this war of attrition with or standoff with Federal Reserve Jerome Powell, right? Remember how he promised again to pare down US government debt? Well, he can't just do that out of nowhere. He wants to refinance it at a lower cost, lower interest rate, which is why he's been pushing for rate cuts, but he can't or could not control what Federal Reserve do or don't do directly. But he knows that the Federal Reserve cannot just allow the economy to fall into recession. So he's trying to threaten, no, I should say, he's trying to pressure them to, with these tariffs to hopefully like artificially bump up inflation again, make all the economic indicators deteriorate in the next few quarters. And they hope that Jerome Powell will actually step in and make an emergency interest rate cut, just like, at the onset of the pandemic. But so far, nothing from Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell is just chilling, having his Coke or whatnot. So in this reality, right, in this battle with the Federal Reserve, Trump is actually losing. He's a loser. It's like he was bluffing in a game of poker with Jerome Powell at the other side. And last, he folded lah. Because Trump thinks he's winning with tariffs and he called it a negotiation. While it is just a very humiliating Uno reverse. So in this round, Jerome Powell won, Trump 0. Moreover, if your intention is to really pressure China in terms of these unfair trade practices or deficit, he got to ask himself, are my Trump cards, pun intended, are my Trump cards that I have are more powerful or at least as powerful as Xi Jinping? End of the day, you just do not back down from your threat with so-called exceptions, right? When you have all the Trump cards, unless the other party actually make you a godfather offer, an offer you can't refuse, right? But Xi Jinping actually China did not make Trump any offer. In fact, as you know, that China retaliates with their own tariffs, right? But the thing is, Trump over last week, he just flinched again with this, right? He said that the US administration has put in exemption for tariff for certain items, consumer electronics like smartphones, computers, from its so-called reciprocal tariff, right? So they know that these are the popular consumer electronics items that are not made in US. Can you imagine? Suddenly all your hard drives, all your smartphones actually, the price doubles. And he know that he was facing a lot of backlash from American consumers and even maybe people who voted for him last year. And you know what? This Apple, right? You take Apple as an example. You know that already, right? Half of Apple's revenue come from selling iPhones around the world, all across the globe. But most Americans are using iPhones. What you think the Americans are using a lot of Xiaomi and Samsung, is it? So, end of the day, let me end this part one with this saying. The Chinese says that, barking dogs don't bite, but silent dogs definitely will. Anyway, in this round two, Xi Jinping again won and Trump is 0. Follow for the next episode.